Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. With the South Korea-U.S. summit now expected in late August, President Lee Jae Myung is stepping into one of the most complex diplomatic moments of his term. Just weeks after sealing a trade deal that avoided major concessions on sensitive sectors such as rice and beef, attention now turns to unfinished details and potential security demands from Washington. U.S. President Donald Trump, in his second term, is pushing allies to modernize their roles, not just their budgets. From joint military exercises to Seoul's stance in the Indo-Pacific, this upcoming summit will test how far South Korea can stretch its pragmatic diplomacy while preserving strategic autonomy. To break down the stakes and explore where the alliance may be headed, we are joined in the studio by Dr. Kim Hyun-wook, president of the Sejong Institute and a leading expert on diplomacy and U.S. foreign policy. A big welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So, Dr. Kim, let's first begin with a trade agreement that has been signed lately. So, despite avoiding further market openings in rice and beef as well, the Korea-U.S. trade deal has now been formally concluded. I wonder first, what's your assessment on the overall deal?
Well, yeah, the deal has been broken right at the end of the date, which is July 31st. That was the final day of the procrastination of the deal, so 3-month delay. When you compare with the European Union and Japanese government deal with President Trump, I think the outcome was pretty good. We were worrying about what kinds of requests will come out from the President Trump, but I think when you look at the outcome, it was I think a well-done deal. I think it was a reciprocal tariff 15% and automobile 50%, and investment in the United States $350 billion, which I think was moderately fine. And also we promised to purchase United States energies like liquefied natural gas, $100 billion worth for 4 years. So overall, I think it was good. But one thing that's a little bit concerning is that the 15% tariff on automobiles, it's all the same rate for the European Union cars and Japanese cars. But before this tariff, 15%, we were enjoying 0% tariff for the U.S. market because of U.S.-South Korea FTA, free trade agreement. And Japanese and European Union cars were paying the 2.5 tariff for the U.S. market. So we were actually enjoying a comparative price advantage over European and Japanese cars in the U.S. market. But that advantage, I think, has disappeared. So that's something that South Korean car companies have to compete in an equal basis with Japanese and European cars.
Mm-hmm. But overall, comparatively, it was a fair enough negotiation. But still, we are aware that other provisions, the details are still in flux. Although a broad agreement, of course, has been reached, several provisions are still pending under talks with Washington. Of those, Dr. Kim, which specific aspects do you think we should monitor during these follow-up talks?
Yeah, we know the styles of President Trump. When he thinks something is not proper and appropriate, he can fix it right away. So maybe in the summit meeting, if President Trump thinks that, okay, maybe South Korean government needs to invest more in the United States, he can raise the amount of investment in the United States. And one more thing that is still not very clear is that President Trump is speaking that the South Korean government promised to open its markets for U.S. rice and beef, but South Korean government is denying all that thing. So that's something we have to look at because in the negotiation process, United States government has been insisting that South Korea has to open for the U.S. beef, which are more than 30 months old, and rice should be open. So all these kinds of openness, market openness, is something I think is still pending. We'll see how it goes.
Right, so there are still details that need to be discussed. Now, there are major events for the month of August: Liberation Day, joint military drills, and also a packed presidential schedule, of course. And of course, we call it a diplomatically dense month for Seoul. So how do you make of this timing? How might this timing shape the Lee administration's approach to summit strategy? And do you think it offers any advantages?
Well, one decision made by this government is that the President Lee Jae Myung is not going to Beijing for the victory ceremony by Chinese government. Yeah, you're right that a lot of events are scheduled in August and right before the summit meeting. I think the summit will happen sometime late August or something. But recently Foreign Minister Jo Hyun, he had an interview with Washington Post, and he clearly mentioned the directions of this government's foreign policies. It is called a pragmatic diplomacy based upon South Korea's national interest, but he clearly mentioned that China is somewhat becoming a problematic with its neighbors. And something like South China Sea issues and Yellow Sea issues, this is something that is, protruding into other countries' territories. So, and also he also mentioned that economic relations with China is changing, and Chinese companies are now competing with South Korean companies. South China has to abide by international law. So I think his interview with the Washington Post is very clear that Lee Jae Myung government's diplomacy centers upon the solid South Korea-U.S. alliance. So I think this will be the direction that this government will have when President Lee Jae Myung meets President Trump, I think.
So the leaders are expected to meet in late August, and there should be a lot of topics to discuss between the two allies, of course. Dr. Kim, what do you think are the possible items on the agenda for talks?
I think the most important thing is the military issues and alliance issues, because there have been an interim national defense strategic guidance published by Trump government. And also, I think in June this year, a Pacific Deterrence Initiative was released by this government. And the contents are very clear. The U.S. is focusing on China issues, China threat, and homeland security. That's of priority. And the local threats like Iran and North Korea, the allies should take care of all their things by themselves, not the United States. Maybe U.S. will help a little bit, but for example, in the Korean Peninsula, South Korean military has to take care of and take initiative in deterring and dealing with North Korea threat, not the U.S. forces in Korea. U.S. forces in Korea will fly freely into other regional areas to deal with China threat issues and Taiwan's trade issues and areas. So that's second one. And for that reason, in order for allies to take care of the regional and local threats by themselves, allies should raise their defense budget more. So that's pretty much a big picture. So I think based upon that, more pressure on South Korea to take a more active role will be something that we expect from the summit meeting. Now South Korea, the U.S. government is expecting South Korea to raise more burden sharing and cost sharing, and so-called strategic flexibility, which means that U.S. forces in Korea will fly freely into other areas, not committing into the Korean Peninsula only, into other areas like Taiwan's trade areas and South China Sea areas. And that's something, the big picture of the defense strategy that the U.S. is thinking in the Indo-Pacific region. And those changes and transformation of South Korea-U.S. alliance will be a big agenda that the summit meeting will deal with, I think.
Right. So it also circles upon, defense, as you've mentioned. And Trump has been calling for alliance modernization, including raising Seoul's defense burden and also expanding the role of Indo-Pacific security. Then when this topic actually comes into light, what kind of boundaries do you think South Korea should consider in this new phase of alliance?
We definitely now have different threat perception. Of course, the Lee Jae Myung government is not even trying to think of North Korea as a threat, but traditionally, South Korean government was thinking of North Korea threat as a major source of threat. But now the Trump government is looking at China as a major threat and wants to calm down North Korea threat by dialogue and talk with Kim Jong-un. So this kinds of different threat perception is making a lot of coordination difficult, I think. So I think we have to come and talk and coordinate different threat perceptions first. Of course, we look at North Korea as a major source of threat, but if U.S. forces in Korea wants to fly into other areas, like to deal with China threats, South Korea has to be willing to support it. Because that's what the United States is thinking as a major strategic objective of its military forces in South Korea. So even though there seems to be some diverging threat perceptions and diverging strategic objectives, I think the two countries have to talk and coordinate as much as they can. Because if that coordination and dialogue is not successful, alliance will have a very big risk in the near future. So that's what we have to do now.
Right. Then, Dr. Kim, alongside that, so we are awaiting the summit. What do you think are some objectives in the standpoint of South Korea that we should, focus on and likely want to pursue during the talks?
I think we all remember what happened after Lee Jae Myung was elected as president of South Korea. Laura Loomer in the United States, big mama of MAGA group, she tweeted in the internet that, okay, communist regime has come out in South Korea, and the White House position about the Lee Jae Myung government is that, okay, China should not intervene in other democratic countries' internal affairs, all that kind of things. So I think there are some bad misperception in the United States about South Korean government. What we have to do foremost is that President Lee Jae Myung has to meet President Trump and have built up its close personal ties and show to the President Trump that South Korea is a very important and solid and continuing ally to the United States. We are not communist country. We are definitely a democratic country. So this kinds of wrong perception that has been brought up within the United States is something wrong, then we have to rectify that. That's, I think, the most important thing we have to do when two leaders meet in the United States.
Right, definitely an important point to highlight that our alliance, of course, decades of alliance. Now, this also leads to a deeper question. The world is, especially America, is focusing on its America First policy, and we have to question at this point, what does it actually mean to be an American ally in the year 2025?
Yeah, I think, I don't know from when, but from some time on, the U.S. hegemonic position is getting weaker and weaker. Maybe it's because of what happened in 2008, in which there was financial crisis in the United States, and the U.S.-China relationship has changed a little bit, and China became more proactive in the global areas. We don't know, but now what China is doing is that its technological rise is very quick and solid and visible. But the U.S. is losing its competitiveness in the high-tech manufacturing. And of course, when you look at what happened in the Biden government, is that President Biden was ganging up allies and partners to deal with China altogether. but President Trump is breaking all the ties and coalitions with allies and partners. Bilaterally, it's imposing tariff on other countries, and also maybe that's some kind of measures to make those countries to be dependent upon in the U.S. markets. But I think now, there are a lot of complaints within the allies, like in Indo-Pacific region and European unions, that, hey, is President Trump becoming antagonistic to allies? Who are real challenges? Is real challenge the United States or China? So there are a lot of confusion and complaints about what Trump government is doing towards its allies and partners. So I think now it's very mixed feelings being an ally. Okay, the U.S. has been unilaterally providing security and economic benefits to allies, but that kind of role is now getting weaker. But still, when the U.S. is losing its hegemonic position, which country will be the leader that maintains the liberal international order in this world? So I think this is an important inflection point now, and a lot of allies are having confusing in their policies and alliance policies with towards the United States. So many allies, European allies, and like Indo-Pacific region, like Japan, they're still trying to strengthen the alliance mechanism with the United States, but at the same time, they're trying to look at how they're going to live without the United States. So that kind of bifurcated policy is something that they're trying to pursue now.
So it leaves us thinking about how to maintain allies and also be less dependent on America too. Now, so with a lot of things happening between South Korea and the U.S., we want to have a diagnosis of the current state of alliance between the two countries, diplomatically, militarily, and also economically. What's your view on this?
Yes, alliance is still fine, and I think this is just one of many alliance transformations. There have been a lot of alliance transformations. When Soviet Union collapsed, the U.S. engagement commitment to the Korean Peninsula has been weaker, and I think at the time after that, U.S. began to request more commitment by allies. And after the 9/11 terrorist attack, the U.S. foreign policy and security policy changed, and alliance relationship changed too. I mean, the U.S. began to ask more support by allies rather than just unilaterally, U.S. being the only security provider to allies. And 2009, South Korea-U.S. alliance have changed into a comprehensive strategic alliance, which means that the alliance will not be confined into the Korean Peninsula, but be expanding into a more regional and global spheres. So I think at this time, the alliance is expecting another transformation, I think, with U.S. focusing on China, and South Korea still want to stick to the Korean Peninsula issues and North Korea threats. I think this is a important time, but I think by a lot of talk and discussions, we'll figure out throughout the alliance transformation period again, I think.
So this shift, this phase actually highlights how multidimensional the relationship has become. Now, moving forward, before we let you go, Dr. Kim, what single factor do you think will be the most important factor that will shape the America-South Korea alliance moving forward?
Well, that's a very big and complicated question, but I think the core is on China. Not only about the alliance, but about South Korea's foreign policies. I think we have to think about what kinds of strategic value China gives to South Korea. After China was experiencing rapid economic rise, we were expecting from China several things, like maybe China can help us to pursue denuclearization of North Korea. which I don't think was well successful. And by the deepening economic ties between China and South Korea, we were expecting and enjoying a lot of market sharing and cheap labor of China, which I think was very good for our economic success and development. But now China is competing with South Korean companies. No more cheap labor, no more market sharing by South Korean companies. So I'm just wondering, okay, China is a big country next to the Korean Peninsula. We should not have unnecessary conflict with China. But what kinds of benefit China give to South Korea? I think that's something we have to think hard. And in order for a substantial and important relationship between China and South Korea to continue, we have to find out what kind of value and what kind of interest China is giving to South Korea. So I think that's a very fundamental question we have to find an answer to, so that alliance relationship with the United States, U.S. is focusing on China threat. We have to figure out how the alliance will evolve in the near future.
So it will be important to weigh in how China would act as a variable in Korea's future development. But as for now, we will have to conclude our discussion here at this point. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights, Dr. Kim.
Thank you so much.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame tonight. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.